The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren, Jaime, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up, we'll talk about the end of the eviction moratorium. What exactly does this mean for renters, as well as for landlords? Afterwards, we'll talk about how the American Red Cross of Greater New York is still assisting families affected by the recent Bronx fire. And then we'll learn about a study on the cause of severe kidney complications affecting lupus patients. And then a little later on in the show, we'll discuss the importance of prioritizing a child's emotional as well as financial and psychological health during a divorce. And then finally, we'll learn about a not-for-profit providing direct financial assistance to Holocaust survivors. So we encourage you to stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Open. You are watching the show that brings the Bronx right to you. It's Wednesday, January 19th, and we thank you for watching. We also invite you to stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV and, of course, our website at bronxnet.org. We want to give a special hello to all of our viewers who are also watching on the MNN channel as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Well, a lot has certainly gone on throughout the course of the past week. We'll catch you up with a couple of things through our Bronx updates. We start off with community news that we continue to follow. A devastating and deadly 5-alarm fire in the Tremont section of the Bronx that claimed the lives of 17 people, including 9 children. Our BronxNet reporter, Arlene Makoko, has more details. She brings us a story right now.
A devastating and deadly 5-alarm fire on Sunday is the cause of 19 confirmed deaths that include 9 children here at 333 East 181st Street off Tebow Avenue, where the New York City Fire Department is citing a faulty space heater as the cause, shared Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson here on the scene.
We've learned from the FDNY that the source of this fire was a space heater that was not being used properly in one of the bedrooms of a third-floor apartment, and unfortunately, the fire was allowed to escalate and travel to the higher floors.
The fire making international news with Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Timothy Dolan, sharing a message from Pope Francis sending heartfelt condolences early Monday to the victims and their families in response to the blaze that began sometime before 11 a.m., sending smoke and flames to multiple floors throughout the 19-story complex as over 200 firefighters responded.
32 residents that are still hospitalized with serious injuries. We have a number of residents unaccounted for and unidentified. So we're just praying. We are sending condolences to those that have lost their loved ones, those that have lost children. No one imagined they would wake up a Sunday morning and would be faced with running for their lives because of a fire in their building.
Critical to the rescue were these ladders used to pull many out.
This is a building with no exterior fire escapes, and residents had to exit their apartments and travel using the stairwell, as well as FDNY ladders that were helping.
Displaced families were housed in 4 different hotels in the Bronx Sunday night into Monday morning, thanks to the work of the American Red Cross and the New York City Office of Emergency Management. In addition to this, an evacuation site for families is now operational and is also collecting donations at Monroe College's Houston Hall, located at 2375 Jerome Avenue. The American Red Cross is asking those looking for family members to call 311.
We're praying for those that are in the hospital that they survive. We're praying for healing and strength, and we're going to help with burial, funeral services for those that need to be relocated outside of Twin Parks. We're going to help accommodate that as well.
For BronxNet, this is Arlene Makoko.
Thank you, Arlene. And even though it's nearly a week ago, survivors of the Bronx building fire are still tallying up the full devastation of this tragic event. A GoFundMe campaign to raise money has also been put in place to benefit the Gambian Youth Organization. So far, it has more than tripled its goal of raising $200,000. Of course, BronxNet will continue to update you on this and more, providing more coverage on the Tremont Bronx fire. That's all the time we have for our Bronx updates. We encourage you to stay with us, because guess what? We got more open coming up right after this.
When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
And welcome back to the show. New York State's eviction moratorium ended on January the 15th. The moratorium actually halted the evictions if renters filed paperwork stating that the pandemic affected their ability to actually pay their rent. Now, the COVID-19 hold on evictions across the Empire State came to a close more than 4 months after the state extended the measure in September, following the end of federal protections. Here now to share a little bit more, we are pleased to be joined, I should say, by partner David A. Gallo and Associates, Robert M. Link, who brings us to where we are today. And Robert, Happy New Year. And I'll ask the question right off the bat. A lot of people thought that there would be no end to this moratorium, but in fact, the end is actually here. How does this work if you're actually a landlord who's been looking for this a long time coming?
Well, if you're a landlord, and thanks, Daren, for having me on the show again. For the last year and a half, there has been, for the most part, a moratorium on residential and commercial foreclosures. In the most recent version of the law that was passed in September, they extended the moratorium to January 15th, where the tenant could show that there was a COVID-19 hardship, either a financial hardship or a health and safety hardship. So if the tenant checked a box on a piece of paper and sent it over to the landlord or sent it over to the court, all eviction proceedings, any notices, any movement towards an eviction, either a non-payment eviction or a holdover, which means there's no longer a lease, that eviction process couldn't move forward. Now, the landlords are happy to know that starting on January 16th, starting this week when this interview airs, the landlords can proceed with the eviction process. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be, totally opening up the floodgates. I think you're going to start to see a trickling of cases come in. Remember, if you're a tenant and you want to be represented by counsel, there'll be resources at the court for you to consult with, to request emergency funds, to meet with counsel and make sure your defenses are articulated. You'll also be able to request adjournments if you're not feeling well or had a COVID interaction, or even on your first appearance, you're typically able to request an adjournment of the proceedings so you can find an attorney or request another date. They have to grant that to you no matter what. So things are going to move slow at the outset, but you'll start to see things pick up during the year.
One of the things that we talked about with this particular end to eviction is the fact of what the moratorium does. I should say the moratorium coming to an end. One of the things that occurs is the right to a free attorney. Break that down for us, and actually, what are some of the actual steps that a person can take now that they have no opportunity to have a free attorney through this process?
Okay, so when you go to the courthouse, there's various resources available. In fact, if you go to newyorkcourts.gov, there's a lot of resources for tenants who are looking for an attorney, who want information about the eviction process, who want to understand their rights and their defenses. So I would encourage everybody to go to newyorkcourts.gov as a first step. But when you're in the courthouse, you can typically tell the court attorney or the judge that you want to speak with counsel, and they'll arrange an opportunity for you to meet with a free housing counselor or an attorney, and then we'll evaluate you, usually in accordance with your income threshold, about whether or not you qualify for free legal services. Sometimes you can qualify if you have some sort of health issue, or if you're over a certain age, you can also qualify for free legal services. If you don't qualify for free legal services, minimally you can get some advice or maybe some help applying for the emergency assistance funds that were made available over the summer. It's important that even if, and for most accounts, the emergency assistance fund funds were depleted, particularly for residents within New York City. But you want to get that application in my view, no matter what the case is, because just the fact that you have an application pending is going to be guidance for the judge to delay the case, to give you time to see if something can be worked out. You can also apply for what's called a one-shot deal from funds from the city of New York, which is basically a loan, a low-interest loan for you to repay your landlord past due arrears, and you can apply for that one time. So you want to meet with an attorney, you want to review your resources with the court, and if you don't qualify for a free attorney, maybe go to the Bar Association, see if something can be obtained in your price range.
One of the things that people are really concerned about during this time is the fact that you're going to see more and more people now go to court, and the need for evictions. Evictions are going to take place. But you've got people who are saying, proponents, who say, listen, when it comes to the issue of homelessness, we already have an emerging crisis as it is. After these evictions and after people start getting in the courtroom, there is a possibility that we could see a tremendous uptick of New York City homeless.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Again, I think it's going to take a long time for these evictions to ramp up. The court has discretion to delay the proceedings about a year, from once they actually get started. So if there is a pending application for ERAP funds, if the tenant is making arrangements, if you can show proof that, I'm looking for apartments, or, I'm trying to arrange something with my nephew who lives in Long Island so I can move in with them. If you have proof and you're showing to the judge that you're making a bona fide effort to remedy the situation, you tend to get the benefit of the doubt and get an extension of time. So that's what I would recommend to tenants right now. A lot of the housing advocates have actually, and I'm not sure if you intended to bring this up, they've shifted their attention. And one of the reasons why I think this law actually lapsed is the advocates are saying, the moratorium doesn't get to the root problem of curing the eviction crisis and homelessness and these issues. What they are proposing is what's called good cause eviction. It's a proposal that's been sponsored by Senator Julia Salazar from Brooklyn. And what they're saying is, if you're paying your rent and you haven't been a problem tenant and you haven't caused a nuisance, well, then the landlord should have you stay, not just for the remainder of the lease, but as long as you continue to be a good tenant. And if the landlord can't present cause that you should be evicted, good cause that you should be evicted, that you're causing some sort of nuisance or something of that ilk, then they're going to be with you for the long haul. This is a very controversial proposal. You've seen some opposition, even from moderate Democrats, and certainly from Republicans, the landlord lobby. There was an extensive hearing last week, an 8-hour hearing, in fact, where a lot of these issues were fleshed out. And I actually thought the housing advocates made a compelling showing. And the landlords, there were some very persuasive representatives, but, had trouble answering a handful of questions.
So when we talk about where we go from here, what is your anticipation as what we'll see in the short-term future, given the fact that the moratorium expired just now?
Well, I think what we're going to see again is not exactly the floodgates opening up, right? It's almost going to be like a low pressure shower with the evictions starting in the first couple of months here. These cases that were brought before the pandemic, these cases that have been in the housing courts for more than 2 years, you're going to start to see those evictions move forward. And then after that, later this summer, maybe you'll start to see some cases that were commenced during the pandemic. And then I think later this year, you'll start to see a lot more of these, COVID-19 defaults from the pandemic period where there was the moratorium in place. Because remember, for some of these, like let's say a holdover case, you have to serve a 90-day notice for many of the tenants before you move for the eviction. So you'll have the 90-day notice, then you'll bring the case, then the case has to be scheduled, then you appear in the case, and then the tenant's going to ask for an adjournment if they're represented by counsel. Then they'll probably get at least a couple of months if early results are any guide to what this is going to look like. You're not going to see the quick adjournments that you did in the past because of social distancing and other COVID-19 related concerns. So I really don't think the majority of these cases are actually going to be moving out of the door until the later part of 2022 and maybe even earlier 2023.
Yeah. Well, a lot to pay attention to. Certainly, we'll be following this. Thank you, Robert, for bringing us up to speed. We'll double back with you and see what progress or what delays have occurred since this new law has gone out of effect, being the moratorium. If you want to know, the moratorium to end evictions has just ended, and we're going to see what that means for Bronxites as well as those across New York City. Robert, thanks for joining us.
All right, Daren, thanks a lot. Have me on anytime.
No problem, and we will definitely do that. And in the meantime, if you want to get connected to him, please go to his website, DAGALLP.com, and you can find out more information there. All right, we got more show. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk to you in a few. And welcome back. The restoration, the help, and the cleanup continues following the recent West Bronx fire, which ended up killing 17 people and more than 30 people rushed to area hospitals with life-threatening injuries. The American Red Cross actually prevents and alleviates human suffering in the face of emergencies such as this by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. The organization provided assistance to those who were in the fire. And joining us and sharing more is the CEO of the American Red Cross of Greater New York, Mary Barnaby. And we thank you, Mary, for being with us. And again, we also want to thank the American Red Cross for the work and really stepping up to aid those families in that tragic fire, not just being there during that day, but also subsequently after that day as well.
Thank you so much. You said it all. I mean, the first thing that I want to say is that our hearts go out so much to the families that have been affected by this terrible, terrible tragedy. I mean, it is one of the worst fires that we've seen in decades in our city. And we know that people have been really carrying with them so much loss. We have been on the ground since Sunday, and our first step was to try to work with our partners in the city to get people in shelters, which would be, in our case, individual hotels so that they could have a place to stay, especially immediately after. Then they couldn't return to their homes because the city had issued a vacate notice on the entire building for a couple of days. Of course, now people can start to get back in certain floors. And we provided shelter. We also provided meals to folks. We have been staffing in Monroe College, the service center there for since Monday, and providing not only meals to folks who come in who live in the building, the residents, but also we have caseworkers there who are working individually with each family and each household to help them to find out what their needs are specifically. You know, some people have lost medication that they left in the fire. Some people have documents they need to replace. Others have sort of spiritual and emotional needs that need to be addressed. And we're able to bring those support services to the folks, as well as financial assistance to certain households that qualify because of their loss. We also have a team that is available to work with the families who suffered loss of loved ones, and giving them support, and also letting them know about resources that can help them through this terrible time in their lives and through this terrible loss. So those are the things that we're doing. We're going to continue to do that. We still have about 66 families that the Red Cross has worked with who are in hotels staying overnight. We know that there are other families that have made other arrangements with family members or maybe other community groups that are still being housed in hotels. But we hope to see, gradually that people will be able to return to their homes and get their lives back on track.
How does this rank for you in terms of all the work that you do? This isn't the first fire that you've had to deal with. You've had to deal with hundreds and even thousands of fires down through the years. But when we talk about the depth of the magnitude of this particular fire right here, from your perspective, how bad was it in terms of the work that you had to do and the scope of things that really came afterwards?
Yeah, at the Red Cross here in Greater New York, we respond to about, it's sad to say, 6 to 10 emergencies a day. And most of them are home fires. But I will tell you that this is one of the worst we've experienced in a long time. I think there was another in 2017, also in the Bronx. There was an explosion, I think, several years ago in Harlem that actually did have the kind of mass casualty type of result that this one had. But when we see mass casualties like this, it is absolutely one of the worst that we have responded to. And I think that some of the things that, as we look at these types of situations, we always ask ourselves, what can we do as an organization to help people be more prepared, to understand what they can do to be safe? Having a certain type of space heater that, will shut itself off automatically, and, watching out for things like baseboards, having people baseboard heaters, having people be more aware of not using the stove or candles in situations. These are all things that that we try to do in our preparedness work that we do. We work very closely with a lot of the elected officials in this community, as well as around the entire region, to provide education. We're doing a lot of it virtually now, and so we're really trying hard to, get people to be aware of what they should and shouldn't do. It was just Christmas, and we saw so many Christmas tree fires. What do you need to know about those situations to avoid it? And then if you are taken by surprise like these folks were, what do you do to try to reduce the amount of devastation that would result? So in this case, we knew that there were issues around closing doors. That was really important to keep the smoke contained. It's also important to have a plan with your family. Oh, it was so tragic to see family members looking for each other, when they were rescued by the fire department, and not knowing if one of their family members was taken to the hospital or safe or that sort of thing. So we do like to say, if you can, have a plan of where you're going to meet, so that that you can all account for one another. So this is something that we really are hearing in the wake of this fire. We're hearing a lot of requests for us to work with communities around the city to try to help people. I live in a high rise. We're doing it in our own building right now to really, making sure that we're paying attention to what we can control when something is as out of control as that fire was.
How much did the cold weather impact the way that you were able to respond and do what you have to do? I've heard people say that it can make a dramatic difference, but for your organization and your volunteers, how much did the cold weather have an impact?
Well, I think it was more COVID than the cold weather. I think that the cold weather was particularly bad last evening, and we know that some of the folks got back into their homes and the windows were replaced, and so we're very hopeful that they were those that went home had sufficient heat, and I know there was an outpouring of goods that people were able to take back with them to replace, bedding and comforters. And so we're hoping really that, and warm coats. And of course, that was a big part of it. We heard about one woman who never left her apartment and because she didn't know that she could, and she was up on the 15th floor with her 2 pets, her cats. And I'm sure she was so cold the nights that she was in there, and she didn't realize that she could get housing in a hotel. So the cold, yes, does play into it, and people had to replace clothing and that sort of thing. But I think for all of us, the most important thing was keeping people COVID safe, because we know that there is a spike right now in the city. And when we opened up for example, the service center, really wanting to make sure that we were operating in a way that would continue to protect the safety and health of the residents coming in, as well as the people working there to support them.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I want to thank you so much for the great work that the Red Cross has done in this particular fire. Heroic efforts and literally risking lives and saving lives. I want to thank you so much for joining us and then giving us some much needed information. We'll definitely have you back to give us more as we continue to follow this story, and maybe we can talk about fire safety a little bit more in depth going forward. So that way homes can be more and more aware. Thank you so much, Mary.
I would love
Barnaby.
to do that, and everyone be Bronx strong.
Yes, we're going to stay Bronx strong. Indeed, indeed. All right. Well, I want to let you know, for more information, please visit the website of the Red Cross. And you can do that by visiting them and following them on social media at Red Cross NY. We encourage you, please don't go anywhere. We've got more show coming up. Open continues right after this.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
Welcome back. Albert Einstein College of Medicine researchers and their colleagues have found a key cause of severe kidney complications affecting many lupus patients and are now conducting a clinical trial to evaluate a promising treatment that's aimed at preventing those complications. Joining us now and sharing more details, we're pleased to have the professor of medicine and microbiology and immunology at Albert Einstein's College of Medicine, Dr. Chaim Putterman. And Dr. Putterman, glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And so it's got to be an exciting time for this research group and the colleagues as you're looking at your findings. So give us a little bit, when it comes to the area of lupus, about where we are today.
Sure. Well, maybe a little bit of a background about lupus. The immune system is getting a lot of press now in these days of COVID. And lupus, very briefly, is a disease in which the immune system is hyperactive. It's too active. It's active against the body's own tissue and against the body's own cells and against the body's own organs. And when that happens, there's damage, what we call autoimmune damage or self-induced damage to many organs in the case of lupus.
And so when we talk about lupus and we talk about these breakthroughs that we heard, talk to us about what we're finding out by way of these researchers and Albert Einstein College of Medicine.
Sure. So physicians nowadays are using a really broad array of different types of medication to treat the hyperactive immune system. Specifically, one of the major problems that we're trying to target in our treatment is what we call lupus nephritis, or kidney inflammation due to lupus, which is a condition which is actually quite common among patients with lupus, and in fact is more common in patients of African American and Hispanic descent. So there's a disease that involves the kidney, causes kidney inflammation, and we need to treat it. As I mentioned, there is effective treatment. However, that treatment is what we call non-specific. It's not sufficiently targeted. It targets the immune system, but several different types of cells are targeted, and therefore one of the side effects of this non-specific targeting of the immune system is immune suppression, is suppressing the ability of the immune system to fight off invaders. And what really we're trying to do, and other investigators are trying to do, is find more specific types of therapy, more targeted to specific cell types, and not broadly suppress the immune system, so we'll get just as good results, or maybe even better, but with less side effects.
Can we give us a little bit of insight into what kind of clinical care is available for those who have lupus right now? I mean, we know that more and more Americans are being affected by this, but talk to us about the clinical care that's actually available.
So at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and our affiliated hospitals, we are really very interested in invested in the care of lupus patients. And that is because just the demographic breakdown of the borough is so skewed towards minority populations who are disproportionately affected by lupus. Therefore, Albert Einstein and its hospitals treat many lupus patients. We have a large lupus center at Montefiore, at Jacobi, other hospitals that are affiliated with us, which provide treatment to all ages. We have pediatric lupus patients, we have adult lupus patients, and we try to give all the possible and necessary treatments that lupus patients to be able to them to maximize their potential, their dreams, to be able to live with the disease instead of being really hobbled by it, or not being able to function in their daily life because of the disease severity and its complications.
So what other research is going on concerning lupus at Einstein right about now?
So there's several clinical trials in lupus. So let me say one or two sentences about the actual research that we just published about. So one of the cell types, one of the immune cell types that participates in the damage in kidney inflammation and lupus is called T cells. And the type of therapy which we showed was effective in preclinical models, we showed that blocking a specific set of interacting molecules present on the T cells and in other cells called CD6 and ALCAM, that was very effective in treating the complications of lupus nephritis in our animal models. Because of this idea, and because we also saw that this particular pathway, that this particular couple of CD6 and ALCAM, as we call these immune molecules, were also present in lupus kidneys, in human lupus kidneys. And we found evidence for high levels of ALCAM in the urine of patients that had lupus nephritis. All this suggests that whatever we find in mice is also potentially applicable to humans. And now the clinical trial that we are currently engaging in is to see whether blocking an antibody blocking CD6, this particular molecule in T cells, will be effective and safe for patients with lupus nephritis. There are other clinical trials which are taking place at Einstein. Again, we are looking for all the time, it's very important to us to get the best medication to the patients in the Bronx who need it.
Is there a particular group that's highly impacted by this disease the most?
Yes, unfortunately, it is a disease which is not only more prevalent, but also more severe in African Americans and Hispanics. And we know these are populations which are very present in the Bronx. We see a more skewed and more severe type of disease. We see more complications. We saw more progression towards end-stage renal disease. So these are populations of patients or groups of patients that we really care a lot about and need to be able to prevent lupus from affecting them as it could.
Yeah. And so in regards to symptoms, what are some of the major symptoms that people have that maybe may not be so familiar with that should be going out and getting tested for lupus?
So lupus is what we call a multi-system disease. It involves multiple organs. But before that, there are specific populations in which the index of suspicion is particularly high. Most patients with lupus, the large majority, in fact, are women. Lupus in men is much less common. Also, most of the women with lupus are in a specific age range, between the ages of 15 and 45. So first of all, we want to have the particular demographic. So if a woman, a young woman from African-American ancestry comes into your clinic, you're already much more thinking about lupus as a possible explanation for complaints. And then the second thing that makes us think about lupus is, again, the multi-system nature of the disease. They don't only come in with disease affecting their joints or their kidney or their skin or their heart, or rather it's a disease that at the same time can affect several different types of tissues and organs.
So for people who want more information, how do they go about getting more information with regards to this? Because there are so many things that people do need to know, but unfortunately, the window of information for some, or I should say access to information for some, is not always readily available.
Well, I'm glad to say in the case in lupus, that's not the case. That really there's a lot of excellent information out there. There's several patient organizations that have put together high-level, approachable, clear, understandable patient information. This is not informational. These are not scientific articles for physicians. These are for patients. What do you need to do? What do you need to look out for? How do you need to take their medications? And they're really very approachable, and they're very happy to help any lupus patients from whatever borough that gives them a call or contacts them through social media.
All righty. Dr. Chaim Putterman, thank you so much for being with us and sharing with us some much needed information when it comes to the area of lupus. Thanks for joining us, I should say.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know if you want more information, please visit the website, einsteinmed.edu, and also follow them on Twitter and Instagram at einsteinmed. Well, we do have more show. We don't want you to go anywhere. Open continues coming up right after this. And welcome back to the show. January is International Child-Centered Divorce Awareness Month. It's a month that's actually dedicated to educating parents worldwide about avoiding the harm that they cause unknowingly and inflicting on their children, particularly when they pursue a non-peaceful divorce process. Our next guest is a matrimonial and family law attorney who urges divorcing parents to keep their children in mind during a difficult time such as that. Joining us and sharing more details, we're pleased to be joined by attorney Lauren P. Raysor, and we thank you so much for being with us, Lauren.
Thank you, Daren. Thank you.
And glad to have you. And as we said, January is a rough time, and we know historically a lot of couples decide that it is not that time to continue. And unfortunately, children get caught in the gap. And when we talk about children getting caught in the gap, what are some of the things that maybe we may not recognize, but children have to experience when decisions like these are made?
Things are a little bit different today because I also want to hone in on what happened during COVID. COVID even made it, people were making life decisions. Those who were on the fence about getting divorces, now they were getting divorces. Those who found out that staying together was a great thing during COVID, they've now sort of renewed themselves and they want to stay married. So COVID really did an interesting twist on matrimonial. My position has been, I don't like coming into a case where the children are not put as number one in the divorce. And I think what goes on in the divorce matters that I've seen is the bludgeoning of each other and not really caring about the effects on the children. No matter how much I may counsel a parent or a couple or my client, sometimes the feelings, the hate, the animosity just overtakes the entire proceeding. So I can tell you such things that are funny. In this age, obviously we have internet and we have emails. I receive hundreds, thousands of emails from clients back and forth, fighting with this one, and I want this, and he didn't give me this date, and I want that date, and all of that is going on. The videos, when I prepare for trial, they have thousands of videos that are taken back and forth of when they can't hear from the child. It's just a lot of animosity. So I agree that the children have to be placed as number one. And I say that all the time in my matrimonial matters and my family court matters.
How can we go about making a better difference in the lives of these children? Because we do understand that they're the ones that actually get caught in the gap. And while divorce could be imminent, it doesn't have to be as painful, particularly for children. So what can clients do? If I got a couple that's watching right now and they're getting ready to contemplate divorce, how can they make it more peaceful for their kids?
I think what it is that one, I think they need to have mediators right away. I think that's the most important thing, to have some level of mediation in the beginning of their divorce. Try it, go to someone, go to counseling while, if you're contemplating a divorce, try to go to counseling and discuss how you're going to work out what you're going to work out with the children and things like that. Try to have a discussion in advance of the divorce, if you can. Look, sweetheart, we're not going to make it, but let's talk about the children. I can tell you it's difficult because once a divorce begins, the two parents, they take on a very, they take on a different stake in their lives. And oftentimes they believe they're caring about the children. That's the most important thing. They believe that they're caring about the children. For example, if a woman says, I'm the best person to have full custody of my children, they believe they're helping the child. Then the father says, I'm the best person to have custody of my child. He believes he's helping the child. Meanwhile, the child doesn't know where they're going to be in the future. And that is so nerve-wracking and disheartening for that child, because they don't know where they're going to be. They don't know where they're going to live. So I think counseling before, mediation if that's possible. Try to work out the issues in advance if you can, and see if that works. But I can tell you a lot of times it doesn't work, and the emotions get they get so tied up in emotions.
Yeah. Here we are in January, the beginning of the year. Is this the time of year that you actually see more and more cases come across your desk?
Well, I think from my position, maybe not every lawyer, I know that between January and February, I generally get calls about matrimonial matters. I think people are making decisions about, especially, and even during COVID, people are making lifetime decisions. I'm not going to be stuck with this person if there's another COVID or another pandemic. I want to make sure that's not the person that I have to be on lockdown with. Or like I said before, it could be, we're so in love, this is the person I want to be in lockdown. You also see a lot of marriages also during this time. But in my office, I tend to get frequent phone calls after January 1st and February about what people want to do with their lives. And if they don't want to stay with the person, they're getting ready in the new year to change whatever pattern that they had in the past.
Yeah. And so where do you go from here when you have a couple and a family that really are in this hostile setting? They're going back and forth. The child is actually caught in the middle. What kind of work can you do as a lawyer to really keep them on center, to remind them, listen, children first?
I think I'm the type of lawyer that gives them what time it is. Not to say other lawyers don't. It's not about the money. It's not about, because lawyers get paid hourly. Lawyers get paid whatever. So the more the fighting, I mean, I know a lawyer right now lives off fighting, because that prolongs it. That's more hourly fees, more hourly rates, and they don't care if they bludgeon the other side, because that's all that they do. I think from my standpoint, because of my background and my, sensitivity, I sometimes want the families to stay together. And I approach it from the standpoint, look, you guys really want to do this? So I come at it where it's not fee-based. It is for the families that I deal with. I try to be straight up no chaser and say, you're going to start, once you start this is what could happen. Or do you think you should go to counseling and give it another shot? Because it might not be anything better out here. You know what I mean? So that's how I approach it. And I don't play when it comes to the children. I don't want children in the middle of it. And it's not about fees, it is about the children. And I will tell the wife or the husband, particularly, I will tell the wife or the husband, okay, that there are two parents here and you're stuck with the two parents. So you have to begin the process of getting along. So I'm very tough on my clients also. As I'm representing them, I'm still looking out for the child to the best that I can look out for the child. So some of my advice may not be what my clients want to hear. So if I tell my clients, look, you're going to have to deal with this parent, father or wife, no matter what. So you can act the way you want to act, but that person is still going to be the father and that person is still going to be the mother. So you may have to get over it. And I'm saying this in the passion that I have, because that's the passion that I give. Okay, so I'm battling all of that and representing them to the best of my ability. But I also, and that's why they like me, because they know I care about the children. They know that. So.
Well, no, and very much needed and very much appreciated. Lauren P. Raysor, want to thank you for being with us. And as we talk about this month, really putting an emphasis on children. And so want to thank you again for joining us and being with us here on Open.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you. All
righty. Now, for more information, I want you to do me a favor. You can visit our website at laurenpraysor.com. And then also you can call her at 914-733-8080. Again, 914-733-8080. We encourage you, don't go anywhere. We have more show coming up. Talk to you in a few. back. January 24th is the United Nations Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is more than 70,000 Holocaust survivors living in the United States presently. And the Blue Card is a not-for-profit organization that's actually dedicated to providing direct financial assistance to Holocaust survivors since 1934. We have now with us the executive director of the Blue Card, Masha Pearl. And Masha, I'm glad to have you here with us on Open. And for those people that don't know, the Blue Card, as I said, really pays particular attention into meeting the needs of Holocaust survivors. And give us a little bit about the mission behind your organization.
Well, thank you so much, Daren. Thank you for that warm introduction, and it's so nice to be here. The Blue Card is an organization that is dedicated to providing financial assistance to Holocaust survivors in need, whatever that need might be, whether it's emergency one-time assistance for dental hearing aids or medical bills or to prevent eviction, or ongoing assistance to make sure that those emergencies do not happen and that Holocaust survivors can remain independent in their home. And that is really our goal, for Holocaust survivors to feel that they can be safe at home without having to face institutionalization and losing that control, which they felt all those years back. And during these times, which are so challenging, our work has been proven more important than ever. And it's really it's a measure of life and death, whether a survivor gets utility bills paid or has food on their table or has enough funds for co-pays and transportation to and from vaccines. And the list really goes on and on. So I'm just so passionate about the work that the Blue Card does. And each day is really an opportunity to make a difference in a Holocaust survivor's life.
Yeah. And you talk about making a difference in their life. Talk about what this actually means in the life of them, because already going through a tragedy all by itself, and now to be able to have some assistance for particularly a hard time or pressing need. What have you found to be the impact in being able to meet these needs?
Yeah, particularly now with the pandemic, the issues that Holocaust survivors face have been just magnified, and many survivors didn't have children, so they find themselves all alone and really just left to their own devices in their apartments, so they're missing the socialization component. And the Blue Card is providing that for them in a variety of ways, whether it's volunteers or virtual, and also making sure that they're safe by providing telephone emergency response systems. And the way that we measure our impact and see our impact is through receiving thank you notes from the survivors and just receiving their stories. Phone calls are pouring in every single day. A Holocaust survivor recently called from the Bronx and let me know, from the Riverdale area, let me know that they received a telephone emergency response system that they weren't sure that they needed. They felt pretty healthy, but they suffered a fall shortly after getting this installed in their home, paid for by the Blue Card, and they were able to press a button, and an ambulance came and followed up and took them to the emergency room and got them checked out, made sure everything was fine. Had the unit not been there, who knows what the survivor might have been facing or dealing with, or how long that survivor might have been on the floor. So these things just really ignite in us the fire to keep building out the programs we're doing. And the Blue Card really is geared towards seeing what the emerging needs are in the local communities and meeting those needs head on and quickly with a minimum of red tape.
Yeah. In addition, though, you're not just the one-dimensional providing services. Part of what you're doing is also creating an awareness for the community in regards to Holocaust survivors. Give me a little bit more about the awareness and how you aim to really create more awareness about the Holocaust and its survivors.
And it's such an important thing because alongside with providing this urgently needed assistance, we recognize that there is such a gap in the knowledge of the public at large, and whether it's not being taught in schools or whether just individuals are just not as familiar with the history. And we feel that it's very important to educate future generations. And we have a number of programs geared at educating schools and pairing Holocaust survivors with students, and also being able to speak and tell their stories, and also sharing books that they've written and encouraging Holocaust survivors who may not have told their story in the past. While this opportunity for a survivor to really be able to share their horrific experiences with us is narrowing. To be able to do that now is so important. So we are educating in schools, we are providing speakers to different institutions, whether it's religious or non-religious institutions. And it's very important for days like UN Holocaust Remembrance Day and the Holocaust Remembrance Day in April to really be focused on Holocaust and the plight of survivors, and us being able to get as many stories out there as we can while Holocaust survivors are still with us and they're in their 80s, 90s, and beyond. So that window is slowly closing, very sadly.
Yeah. And so what can the public actually do to be able to be of assistance, to support the work that's going on, and then also to be able to partner with Holocaust survivors?
There are so many ways that individuals can get involved. And of course, the number one is to give funds and earmarked, whether it's for a program for Holocaust survivors or a specific need that they might have. There can be employee matching. That's, of course, always very helpful. Even just shopping on Amazon or on eBay, a percentage goes to the Blue Card. So choosing the Blue Card as a charity for funds to go to. Similarly, it's not just all about funds. There's opportunities to volunteer. While in-person volunteering is limited, we also are offering virtual volunteering via video. There is an opportunity to participate in endurance sports events, of whether it's running in the New York City Marathon, of which the Blue Card is an official charity, or in the five city bike tour, which the Blue Card is an official charity, and a number of smaller 5Ks and walkathons. It's a great way to get the entire family involved and also do something physical, especially now in the spirit of January and everyone being their best self, just to get active and also do something that gives back and raises funds for Holocaust survivors is incredible. And it's a way to get to also raise awareness. So sharing the participation with 5 to 10 different people is something that is an opportunity that we just are so grateful for. And really, there's constantly updated opportunities to be involved on the Blue Card's website, bluecardfund.org. So I encourage everyone to check in frequently as we're updating that constantly. And on United Nations Holocaust Remembrance Day, to think of whether it's telling a story of a Holocaust survivor that you may know and sharing it on social media, or just reading Anne Frank book or the story Elie Wiesel's book, Night, which is frequently taught in schools. It's something that I highly encourage everyone to get educated, to get re-educated on, and to spread that message.
Masha, so much to really chew on there, and we want to tell people definitely on January 24th to take advantage of the day, whether, as you said, by reading a book, watching a video, becoming more aware, as so many people have suffered and through the Holocaust. But we have some great survivors, and we also have some great people doing some great work in honor of them. Masha Pearl, thank you so much for being with us here on Open.
Again, thank you so much. It's an honor.
Our pleasure and our privilege. Listen, want to let you know, if you want more information, please go ahead and visit them at their website at bluecardfund.org, and then also on Twitter as well as Facebook at The Blue Card. Well, we've come to the end of our show today. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us, and most of all, you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch Recablecast on BronxNet Channel 67, also Verizon Files Channel 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. We also want to thank our viewers who've been watching on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is broadcast live simultaneously on the MNN channel. Now, if you desire a brand new episode, we'll come back on Friday morning. My girl, Rena Valentine, will join you with the best of Open on Friday, featuring arts and entertainment. For all of us here on the Wednesday Open, I am Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless, most of all, keep this channel wide open.